This is finding square roots. A square root of a number is a number that when multiplied by itself equals a given number. Every positive number has two square roots, both a positive and a negative square root. A perfect square is a number whose square roots are integers. A radical sign is the symbol we use to represent a square root, and the radicand is the number we put under the radical sign. So here we're finding the square root of 64. This is our radical sign. 64 is referred to as our radicand because it's under the radical sign. Positive 8 is one of my square roots of 64 because 8 times 8 will equal 64. But square roots also have a negative answer, so here I'm looking for the negative answer that gives us 64, and that would be negative 8 times negative 8 also gives us 64. So we have two answers. Since these answers are both integers, 64 is considered a perfect square. Let's find some square roots. So they're asking us to find the two square roots of 49. 49 is a perfect square. So we want the positive square root of 49 and the negative square root of 49. Well, 7 times 7 gives us 49, which also means negative 7 times negative 7 will give us 49. So our two square roots of 49 are positive and negative 7. Here, they're asking me to find the square root of 25. Since it's written with the radical sign and there's no negative out front, they want the positive number that will give us 25. And that would be 5 times 5. In this case, we're being asked to find the square root of a fraction. But I can do my numerator and my denominator's square root separately, which actually makes it quite a bit easier. They want the negative answer. The square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 16 is 4, so negative 3/4. In this case, they're asking for the positive and negative answer to the square root of 2.25. So if I square root 2.25, I get positive 1.5. If I want the negative version of the square root of 2.25, it's going to be negative 1.5. And I can write them separately, or I could write it with a plus minus in front, which indicates that the two answers for the square root of 2.25 are positive 1.5 or negative 1.5. When you're squaring a positive number and you're finding a square root, you're actually doing inverse operations. Just like adding and subtracting are inverse operations, they undo each other, or multiplying and dividing, squaring and finding a square root are inverse operations. And you can use this relationship to evaluate expressions and solve equations that involve squares. So let's try a couple of problems here. So just in PEMDAS, when you would do parentheses first, then exponents as your third step, multiplying or dividing, and as your last step, adding and subtracting, squares and square roots are both in that second tier, that second step. So here I don't see any parentheses, but I do see a square root, so that's going to go first here. The square root of 36 is going to be 6. Now I will multiply. 5 times 6 is 30. And finally, I will add. And so my answer here is 37. In this case, I want to do the square root first. And this time, I'm actually going to do 18 divided by 2 because it's going to turn into a perfect square, and I like that a lot better. Now I can do my square root. So the square root of 9 is 3. And 1/4 plus 3 is 3 1/4. In this case, I see in parentheses, they want the square root of 81, which is 9. And 9 squared leads us back to 81. Technically, the square and the square root cancel each other out, so I could go straight to 81 as my answer right in the beginning. All right, let's take a look at one more problem. a real life application. So let's say we have a crop circle with an area of 45,216 square feet. And they want to know, what is the radius of the crop circle? Well, it's obviously a circle because it's called a crop circle. And the formula for finding area of a circle is pi times radius squared. Now we know the area. It's being given to us. 45,216 equals pi times radius squared. So in this case, I'm going to divide each side by pi to cancel out the pi. Cancels out here, and I'm left with r squared, and 45,216 divided by pi is going to be roughly 14,392.7. So to get rid of a square, the inverse of a square is square root. So I'm going to do the square root of each side here. Now square and square root cancel each other out, so I'm just left with r here. And I'm going to do the square root of 14,392.7, which is approximately 120. So the radius is about 120 feet.